This is the case study by Cheyenne Depew. So this is the page with the storyline, and to the left is the principal, Richard Inman. He's the principal of Rocket Junior High. He has been trying to create a relationship with James. He feels like he is making progress with the student until the incident with James and David had happened. He has taken away David's suspension because he does not think that David is in the wrong. Richard's boss threatens him with paperwork unless he files David's suspension. Here in the middle is James. James is a south side of town student, has a hard time with behavior at school, slowly makes progress in school when Richard is playing basketball with him after school. James handed a pair of brass knuckles to David and threatened him if he did not take them. He is now in juvie for the incident that he took blame for and suspended for more than 45 days and is in the DEP program. To the right is David. He's an honor roll student, excellent trombone player. David has never been in trouble with the school in the past. David was in trouble because he was found with brass knuckles by the school officer and was taken to juvie, even though that James took blame that he gave them to him and threatened him to hold on to them. The bubbles above show like their mindset of it. Richard started getting a connection with James. He had never had an issue with David and does not want to give paperwork to David. James' emotions started to change and feels for David and starts realizing that he's actually sad and doesn't really understand what's going on. David's mom doesn't understand much because David has never been in an incident like this. But James' mom is kind of like, oh, deal with it, like maybe he'll learn from you. All right, so there are some legal issues here, is because James had two things that are bigger because they're legal and ethical issues, because James had threatened another student if David didn't take the brass knuckles. And secondly, he brought the weapon to the school that he intended on using. David did take the brass knuckles from James and did not notify another teacher staff member and just had them in class. So that's an issue as well because he could have told someone and not have been in the situation. I also found state statutes and laws on this website called findlaw.com, and brass knuckles are illegal in many states, and other states have different regulations of what materials and what can be on them for accessorizing, like rounded or pointed, or you'd have to find out what state the school was in. No one was harmed, but there was an intent to harm someone else after school. Sorry. But the other issue was that I feel like since James is more on the south side and has a past, that they are looking into it deeper on him than they are on David, since David also comes from a higher area. So what has happened? My one sentence is 2 students complete the same action but get 2 different punishments and the way that they were seen. So they were both in the wrong. They both completed the same action except minus the fact that he had actually brought them to school. But David kept them in his pocket and did not try getting them off of him. So, for the people, Richard is the principal. He has the background of the school. He understands each kid's past. There's James. James has a past as well as not being the best student. David has a standing record of being the good student, excellent trombone player. The moms are at a loss. James's mom is kind of at an extreme loss of what to do with him anymore. David's mom is completely lost in the fact of what's going on. And Richard's boss is threatening Richard with paperwork which can affect his career. So the facts about the place is that it is at a middle school, and I feel like it's more of an inner city school just because they stated on how he came from the south side, so maybe it could even be more of a low income school. The program is that the middle school is the junior high level, and there's different programs such as sports and band, which they're both involved in. So to review some of the information, the first question is, do I have enough information to make the final decision? And I think that there could be more of an interview process to find out more of how this happened. Like, I know my schools has video cameras, so can they go back on video cameras to see how James really handed them to David, or did David try resisting, or did David just take them from him? The second thing is, what else could I have learned from the situation is that if these things are happening, what has happened in the past, and what I need to do better as administration to prevent these things from happening. For like the stakeholders and the community together, I think that it kind of reflects on what's going on outside of school as well. And so identify the options and possible consequences. So with the first part, I would consider the time. Like, I don't feel like this case was necessarily discussed over time. I feel like it just happened. And so I would try to find a couple more hours to maybe even a day to really look over the information to make sure that the necessary actions are taking place. For the action, I would call the police, because if the brass knuckles are illegal in that state, then that needs to be taken care of, let alone it was in a school where weapons are prohibited. The suspension should be automatically 1 to 2 day suspension until the decision making can be done. That way the kids are out of school, everyone's safe, the parents can talk to their kids about what's going on, and that gives us more time as well. And then probably community service, like, granted, parents' consent, of course, but that way they have to work hard and actually think about what they did wrong and why they're there. And some different strategies I thought of for some counseling, just to see if it's things that are going on at home that trigger, because learning a lot about the parents has explained a lot about the kids. And just being a mentor and like helping the kids learn how to be an adult. Like, granted, they're children, they're not going to be an adult, but like mentor them and to show them what is right, what's the better way to do things. And meeting with the parents to see what they need help with as well, because sometimes parents need advice. And when I say take time, I think that when we made these earlier in the course, that these would be great to show and like help make with decisions, because it's black and white. You can't say you did one thing for one student and one thing for the other. If you can go straight down the column, go over and be like, did he do this? Yes or no? Did this happen? Yes or no? Is there proof? And just keep going down the line until you can find out what really happened. And like this, like, was it higher than a tier 2? So we would go to yes. Did it put the student in danger? Yes. So then we follow the school protocols, which I know, like, in a school protocol, if a student brings a weapon, it's X amount of days, depending on each school. So there's very many like pros and cons, and here's a couple that I thought of. So if students have a second chance to learn from their mistakes, they can build from it, because I know I learned from my mistakes personally, but students will also take advantage and say, hey, I didn't get in trouble for this, so I can do this again, or what else can I do? Administrator can grow stronger and build relationships with the students, because they need that time to get to know the student and like build trust with them. But students will not have the same accountability with administration. They would see them maybe more as a friend than what administrator is really there to do. The community sees the connection that the administrator has with the student and see that they are trying and they're having a good time with the student, or that they're caring for the student. But I just know, like, I'm only 23 and going back to elementary school this year. And elementary school is not the same anymore. And so I don't think the older generation, the community, may not see the things the same and understand. So the pro of calling the police is to show enforcement and show that you're not messing around as an administrator. But like it said, like you want to warn but not threaten. So I think that's a hard line. Like it's really thin, like to go over. But it also kind of shows that you need backup and that you're not strong enough for your own in a way. But if like the brass knuckles were the case, then it needed to be done. So my final decision was to expel James because he threatened another student with a weapon, suspend David because he did not handle the situation how he should have, and that the fact that the cop had to search him to find the weapon. For those that are around them, to think about the community, the other children, the teachers, and the higher-ups. The community needs to know what's going on in the schools, and I see it has a right in a way because their tax money does go to the schools. The other children need to know just because they need to know like what's going on in their school and how to protect themselves necessarily, not as like to fight, but as in to be aware. The teachers need to be aware and have more training to understand the signs and how to handle these situations if a weapon is involved. And the higher-ups need to know to be able to know what trainings to give to the teachers, to know what's going on in their schools, and just to inform the parents. And with the meetings, everyone who is affected, and I think everyone is affected because you never know who or when or what or where it's going to happen. So with the final decision, let me move myself. David would be suspended with counseling, so I think counseling would help build up who he is and help explain to him like on how he can reach out and understand that it's okay to speak up. James would be expelled for threatening and bringing a weapon to school, and with parental consent, I think community service would be great. The outcomes. So for the safety of students, I think that there shouldn't really be a second chance for the weapon situation. Like, granted, I'm not agreeing with bringing the weapon to school, but the fact that you bring a weapon and threaten and make another student carry it, I think that like gives it 3 steps up. And just to keep a minimum of second chances and depending on the situation for the safety of the other students. For the who needs to know? The school board needs to know, the police need to know because it was a legal weapon, administration, of course, needs to know so they can handle the situation within the school. Parents need to know that their kid is safe, that the situation has taken place, and that it won't happen again to your knowledge, and that you're doing everything that you can do in your place to take care of it. And the teachers need to know so they can watch out for other students as well. So for dealing it with your own, I would deal with it on my own, but police do need it notified because there was a legal weapon, and it was on school grounds. And so police are trained in the safety of pedestrians and to make sure that the weapon is getting off the student properly. So you want to warn but not threaten, so I'll make sure to understand that what was wrong and make sure that they get the punishments and everything that they did, but I don't want to be threatening. Like, it's really hard to go over, or it's really easy to go over that line. But the plan B is that I see a lot of like inner city schools with such behavior. And granted, I don't know if this is crossing the line or not, but I think that just having the parents sign consent and like allowing them to see like the juvenile detention center and what will happen to them if they continue with the actions. Because I don't think that the kids can see the end, and until they see the end that they're going to keep going because they don't know what their actions are going to get them to. And there's my resources. And that's the end of my video.